Hey guys, I wanted to make a video on this article that I wrote on Did Jesus Teach Free Grace Theology? So I'm just going to read it here. When I was a Christian, I was a strong proponent of free grace theology, which teaches salvation by faith alone and eternal security in their most unqualified senses. Of course, there are many passages in the Bible which can be called problem texts for these positions. How many passages? Probably a little more than 140, which is approximately the number of passages I had made articles on during the time in which I was free grace. Many of these passages come from the mouth of Jesus, specifically the Jesus of the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. For example, from Matthew 7, "Not everyone that says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have I not prophesied in your name, and in your name cast out devils, and in your name done many wonderful works? Then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you that work iniquity." This passage in Matthew's rendering of the Sermon on the Mount, this passage appears in Matthew's rendering of Sermon on the Mount. Up to this point in the sermon, which begins in Matthew 5, Jesus gives moral instruction. Fulfilling this moral instruction requires diligent effort on behalf of someone. And the passage in question suggests that if they don't do these things, then they will be rejected by Jesus. A rather straightforward works-based justification and criteria for judgment. That is the understanding of the passage that one would come away with if they only had Matthew to read. Jesus frequently teaches this way in the Synoptics. It's not merely the absence of any verses which would be clearly pro-free grace, though it is certainly that as well. Instead, the Synoptics and the Jesus presented in them present a pretty clear message that how one lives will determine whether or not they'll go to heaven or hell. If they pass a sufficient yet undefined threshold of holiness, then they are let in. If not, they will be condemned. Admittedly, this theology of Jesus renders passages like Ephesians 2:8-9 and Romans 4:5 into basically meaningless doublespeak if those authors had any awareness of what Jesus taught or intention of representing his teachings to their readers. But what about the Gospel of John? Though it has problem texts for free grace as well, it at least appears to be more accommodating of the theology presented by a straightforward reading of Ephesians 2:8-9. However, the Gospel of John, as discussed at length in this article, cannot be treated as a legitimate source for the words of Jesus by anyone with integrity, including by conservative Christians. Jesus in John's Gospel sounds completely different in language and theology from the Jesus of the Synoptics, while mirroring the language and theology of the author of 1 John, sometimes verbatim. This is because John essentially used Jesus as a puppet to teach his own theology. Therefore, free grace Christians really aren't followers of Jesus, at least on the topic of soteriology. Instead, they follow John and some of Jesus' successors. The actual person, Jesus of Nazareth, appears to have taught a rather straightforward works-based justification in order to get into a very imminent kingdom of heaven, which did not come as he promised. After his death, a redemptive theology was created by his followers to give his execution a metaphysical meaning, when in reality, while the man was alive, he was interested in setting up a kingdom of heaven which never came. This is why the gospel switches from the announcement of the coming theocratic kingdom, the Synoptics, to something entirely different after Jesus' execution. The movement essentially had to redefine itself in response to the totally unforeseen death of its founder. This is also why New Testament soteriology and eschatology are so confusing. Multiple messages are being communicated and the details don't work out cleanly because they're trying to rework the death of Jesus into their theology when Jesus himself never did. And adding to the confusion, there are multiple factions producing material in early Christianity, and they range from extremely unclear or borderline esoteric, John, to messy attempts at philosophy, Paul, to some blend of Judaism mixed in, with Jesus mixed in, early followers of James, the Judaizers, etc. So conclusion, did Jesus teach free grace theology? No, a responsible evaluation of the existing evidence suggests that he taught basically the opposite. The words put into his mouth by John are a little more than John using Jesus of Nazareth as a puppet. And additionally, whatever redemption theology emerged later after Jesus' execution tended more towards what could be called free grace, but only very inconsistently. So I'll submit that to Christians, especially free grace Christians, and I look forward to a response. Okay, thanks. Bye.